Hey there. In this episode, we're diving deep with the incredible Alesia Galati, a podcast strategist who's helped launch over 50 shows and a passionate reader who's discovered that fiction can sometimes teach us more about ourselves than any self-help book. Alesia opens up about her journey from growing up in a cult to reclaiming her voice, values, and self-trust. Together, we explore the power of storytelling, reparenting, and what it really means to be empowered from the inside out. Trust me, this is one episode you don't want to miss.
Hi there. Welcome to the Empowered and Embodied Show. I'm Kim Romaine.
And I'm Louise Neal. We're two transformational coaches who are also fellow travelers on the path of growth and self-discovery. And we're inviting you along for the ride.
That's right. We're right here in the trenches with you, navigating the ups and downs of life. And each week we'll be sharing our own experiences, bringing you conversations with amazing guests, and exploring insights and strategies that have helped us find more clarity, confidence, and ease in our lives.
And trust us, we do not have it all figured out. We're learning and growing right alongside you.
So if you're ready to rise above the chaos, doubt, and confusion that sometimes life throws our way,
and step into a more empowered and embodied version of yourself,
then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. I am Kim Romaine, and as always, I am joined by my lovely co-host,
Louise. That's me. And today we have our lovely guest,
Alesia Galati.
Yay, Alesia, we are so glad that you are here with us today. We want to start off this week how we start every week. Friends, what are we celebrating?
I'm going to jump in because this is a big celebration for me, I think. I'm celebrating community, and I'm celebrating not just that I'm surrounded by an amazing group of women who support me in all kinds of ways, and in ways that I never even imagined when I started on my entrepreneurial journey, how I would even get support. I didn't even know that this kind of support existed, right? And this week I'm celebrating, not only do I have community, but that I'm leaning in and actually allowing my community to support me, which I think is a big thing. I don't always do that. I love to talk about my community and promote my community, and I love to support them. But allowing them to support me isn't always easy. And I've tapped in on that resource this last week, and I'm celebrating all of the goodness that has come from that.
Yay, I love that.
Alesia, how about you? What are you celebrating?
So as you were talking, and this is something that I've been like, okay, well, what am I celebrating? Where can I go with this? But I love that idea of community, right? Lately, I've been having a lot of really great conversations with people in the reading space, specifically romance readers, and that community, and how you can read for fun, and you can read for enjoyment and entertainment, and read diversely. Because a lot of the voices in like the top 5 publishers, they tend to push predominantly white authors. And I mean, you've the two that make 50% of the sales are both white authors. And so you being more intentional with our reading, and so like being able to be in conversation with other people in that space has been really empowering and just a lot of fun for me this week. So that's what I am celebrating.
I love that. I actually found a woman, it was probably about a year ago. I am going to not remember her name right now, and I hate that. But this amazing woman that brings forward diverse voices in mythology.
Ooh,
and particularly elevating Black voices in mythology. And I love it because you talk about an entire genre that is like very, very white. There's very little diversity there. Even when we talk about voices from other cultures, it's still filtered through a white voice very often.
Yeah.
And so being able to elevate diverse voices in mythology, and I love mythology. So I love that for the romance world too, because yeah, I can imagine it's probably a very, very white world still.
Yeah. And I think the algorithm pushes it too, right? So that's something that we talked about is when we first got into like romance reading, we read the popular books, which tended to be white authors, and we had to be really intentional and say, hey, algorithm, send me diverse voices, follow diverse content creators, seek out those people that are underrepresented or their voices aren't really as heard or as promoted as the other ones. So yeah, it's difficult, but I think once you find those people that are really pushing those diverse voices, it helps to be able to be like, oh, there's so much out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what you can uncover. It really is. As an avid reader myself. Yeah. I'm not an avid romance reader. It's not a genre that I ever got into, but definitely fantasy mythology, that side. And then also I do the same thing. It's like let's fill the algorithm with as many different voices as we can. So yeah.
Yes.
Love it. We have a little theme here this week about community leaning in, finding new voices, finding new opportunities. Yeah, my gratitude this week, what I'm celebrating this week is leaning in for help. I have gotten really, really good at this over the years. And so I kind of been like, yeah, I'm good at it. I'm good at it. I'm asking for help. Look at all the ways that I'm asking for help. I'm doing all the things. And then there are those spaces where I still feel that I should know that. I should have that information. I should be able to figure this out myself. And there is stuff that absolutely I can figure out myself. And oh, by the way, either I'm not because I'm in avoidant behavior and I own it. That's part of what I do when I don't want to deal with something. I avoid it. I don't want to do it. And I'm really good and can avoid for a really, really long time. But allowing myself to find those crunchy places where I'm saying, yeah, I am smart enough for this. I do know what to do. I do know how to figure it out. And I've been spending a whole lot of time avoiding. Let me get some help so that I can just get through this, whatever this looks like. And fine, I'll feel embarrassed. I'll feel whatever for a little while, but it's okay. I can get to the other side. So I'm leaning into community to find people to help me.
Well, it's recognizing too, right? Is that there's crunch there. And so it's paying attention to where it's crunchy and knowing too that you don't have to figure it all out on your own.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to, again, why we created this podcast is there's not a check and done. Like we figured this out. We're empowered. We're leaning in. We've got it all figured out. It's crunchy and it will continue to be crunchy throughout our lifetimes, different crunchiness or the same, like whatever. But finding ways to allow ourselves to work through it, be messy about it, own it. Like that to me that's where the good stuff is. Even though in the moment it's like, that doesn't feel so good. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So Alesia, I'm going to let the world know a little bit more about you. And I used to say all about you, but it's not all about you. We're going to learn a little bit more in our conversation today too, but this is a good jumping off point, I think. So Alesia Galati has helped coaches and thought leaders launch and maintain over 50 podcasts and has developed a signature thorough system to launching and managing podcasts so you don't have to stress about anything falling through the cracks. Alesia lives in sunny North Carolina, although not so sunny this season, but sunny North Carolina with her 2 kiddos and husband. And when not helping her clients, Alesia can be found reading over 200 books a year, hiking and exploring the zoo with her boys. Alesia, officially welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and can't wait to just be in discussion with you guys. I know it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, 200 books a year? That's crazy. I just want to say that. Whoa. Where do you find the time to do all of the other stuff? If
Be
where do
so
you find
bold.
the
Ask the
time?
question.
Yeah. So this is something that I used to love to read growing up. I would devour books on books on books, especially when I was a teenager. Like you, after lights out, or I was supposed to be asleep, I'd be under the covers with a flashlight reading a book. Um, and I had this just absolute love of reading. And then when I became an adult, I went to college and I was reading those books. I became a mom, and I found that that reading just kind of fell away like entirely, where I wouldn't go reading one book for the whole year. And recently rediscovered, I want to say it was 2020, after losing my job due to COVID, and somehow just got back into reading. And I had tried in the past years, especially as a business owner, to try to read self development books or business books or leadership books. And it was like pulling teeth trying to get through them. And it was so difficult for me to even just like, okay, I feel like I have to make myself do this, and I feel like I should be able to read these books. And if I can't read these books, then I'm not, growing as a person. And it's like, actually, I've done a lot of growing as a person. I actually don't need these books to make me any better than I am today, because the person I am today is incredible. And then I started reading for fun. And when I discovered romance, it was just after having my second kid. And I mean, anyone who's had their second kid can understand a lot of hormones changing, libido changes, so many things, and realized, wow, these romance novels are helping me in
Mhm.
that way. My husband is benefiting from these. Cool. It's like, it was great. And from reading these books, I've also been able to have a deeper understanding and empathy for other people. So, in one of the books, one of the main characters is high functioning autistic. And in reading that, I was like, oh, wow. There are a lot of similarities to how this person feels and approaches the world to how I do. Interesting. Okay. Then, when my son got his high functioning autism diagnosis, I was able to say, it's not the end of the world. I've read romance books where these people have really wonderful lives. They're able to and it didn't turn into this freaking out moment, because I had that to fall back on, and also understanding how I've approached life and that I'm perfectly okay. And my brain just works differently. Another thing is, some darker romance books tend to touch on things like addiction or abuse. And I remember reading this book where one of the main characters was an addict, and being able to get in their mind. They also had really bad depression. I was able to see things that I couldn't see in my mom when she was alive. Like, she would try to explain to me how her depression made her feel, or how her addiction made her feel. And I, in my brain, I'm just like, you just got to move forward. You just got to like do the thing. Like, why are you making these choices? And from reading and being able to empathize with this made up character and get in their head, I was able to say, that's what she felt. That's what she was going through. Wow. Okay. So reading is incredible, but to answer your actual question, how do I get through so many books? Sorry. In the year, is that I make a ton of time to read. So I read about 3 to 4 books at a time, one on my phone, on my Kindle app, one on my actual Kindle, and then I listen to an audiobook. So I've got 3 books in different categories of romance going at the same time. So one might be a fantasy romance, one might be a like mafia romance, and then one might be like a contemporary fluffy romance. That way I don't get them confused, like where we are with things. And so I've got 3 going at the same time. For my audiobooks, I listen to those while I'm cooking dinner, while I'm driving to and from the store or walking around the grocery store, while I'm folding laundry, things like that, where I just can have one headphone in and I can listen to the audiobook there. On my phone, if I'm working and I'm waiting for a file to upload, and we deal with really big files because they're video files and audio files. And so sometimes it can take anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes. And if I want my computer to work well, I need to let it sit for a minute and like do its thing. Great. I've got my phone out and I'm reading my book for those 25 minutes. In the evening, my kids go to bed around 8 o'clock every night. And that gives me from 8 to about 11 of reading time because I don't really watch a lot of TV. There's one night a week where we watch a movie together, my husband and I, because he loves watching movies and watching TV. So that's like our one night together. But I mean, football's on all day Sunday. I'm reading the whole time, or I'm listening to an audiobook and doing 10,000 piece puzzle or 1,000 piece puzzle. So I'm doing those kinds of things. So I fit it into pockets of my day, and also tracking helps me too. So I have like a goal of, all right, 10 pages every day or 10 minutes listened. I usually do well more than that, but at least it's like a set goal that is achievable and isn't too crazy for me.
How do you keep track of, there's like 19 questions I have that came out of what you already said, but like, just really quickly, how do you keep track of the books that you're reading? I love Goodreads because I too am reading multiple books at the same time. And while I can track that, I also want to kind of track what I have read.
Yes. So I use Storygraph, which is founded by a Black woman, and she created and is pretty much the tech behind and the developer behind it. And it's not based on Amazon, which I'm like, I'll give her money. More than happy to. You don't have to. Like, there are free versions that are very incredible, but I'm someone who loves data. And so I pay the extra $5 a month or $50 a year to have the advanced version. And what I love about Storygraph specifically is that it's really good for mood readers. I cannot set here's what I'm going to read over the course of this month. I can't set that for myself. If I'm in the mood for it, then I'll read it. If I'm not, it needs to go back on the TBR list because it's not going to get read right now. And so from that, I can say, go to the explore page, and I've already given it a lot of my preferences. It knows the books that I've read, and I can say, I'm in the mood for something dark and mysterious. And then it'll give me a list of options that way. And I really like that. And even it will filter my own TBR of, here are the books that you've said you want to read that are in these categories. So, and it also has an up next, which really helps too, of like, here's 5 books that you want to kind of read next, maybe. That's good. But yeah, I love that. And then I also like the added stats on the back end because I can create custom graphs specifically for tracking diversity. So last year, my diversity, I was really frustrated that with myself that I had read maybe 20% BIPOC authors versus the 80 that were white authors or unknown. And I said, I want to double that percentage. And so my goal was 40% BIPOC authors. So far, I've actually flipped it. I'm at 60% BIPOC authors and 40% white or unknown authors. And being able to see that number helps me stay true to my values and also like my intentions of reading for the year.
I'm going to have to check that out because that last part where you're able to actually filter it based upon wanting to add that more diversity in, like I can't do that in Goodreads, right? I'm being filtered some other algorithm that I don't even understand. And I'm just going, okay. Feels a little blind.
Yes, for sure. And there's a part in when you write a review, you can actually say, was the cast diverse? And and you can put in yes or no. It's complicated, right? And so you're like, maybe they're monsters, so it's complicated, right? So you can put those in, and that also helps with they have like a little AI generated tab at the top. I want to say that's for premium users, where it'll say, you liked elements of this other book that you read here, or this book also has elements of another book that you enjoyed or that you read, so it's similar in that way, and that can tell you, hey, you're going to enjoy this, or hey, this is a little different than what you typically read, but you might enjoy it because of this. And so I really like that approach too. It's very custom, which is different than I think Goodreads has. And also Goodreads has not updated their UX in 10 years. So
I was
they
going to say
don't have any
forever.
intention.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I will say the benefit to me for using Goodreads has been that I have increased my reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm able to track and I'm able to connect and I'm able to get more suggestions, particularly coming through COVID, because I had not, like, I wasn't going to the bookstore and having these conversations, and I wasn't in class. A lot of things that I was, recommendations, going back to kind of our celebrations, being in community really supports having recommendations and having things come through of like, have you read, did you see? And yeah, I missed that. And so allowing myself to lean in a little bit further and say, okay, well, where can I get? So, but now Storygraph.
Yes.
Okay. We'll get the link from you and put it in the show notes, because we want to elevate that as well.
Yes.
Something else that you said that came to mind is this idea of like the difference between reading self-development books that are written so that you can feel like you are growing and understanding yourself more, versus reading something that's not made for that purpose, and yet understanding how much growth and development you're getting from reading that. So I know, like, my background's in theater, and people ask me all the time, how do you know so much about so much? I'm like, well, the theater was a really big part of that. And I think literature and other things that we can tap into actually are amazing ways that we can develop as humans. And I'd love to just have a little conversation around that of like, we don't have to just go to the how-to book. We don't have to go to the personal development section to understand more. How else can we pick up that so that we can actually learn more about our own humanity and the humanity of others around us?
Yeah. I think part of it is reading for fun and for enjoyment, I think, is at the base of it. So if self-development is enjoyable for you and you really feel like that's the way you like to start your day and that is helpful to you, then go ahead. No shame, no shade at all. But if you're finding yourself, as one of my very good friends likes to say, shoulding all over yourself, saying, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. If you find yourself saying should a lot, then maybe find something else that you are enjoying and tap into, instead of saying, oh, well, I should be okay to read this or I should be able to do this. All right, well, what do you want to do? What lights you up? Get a little book that's something different. Maybe it's a book of poetry. And maybe when, go back to when you were 13, 14, 16. What kind of books did you like then? Pick one back up and see how it is. I mean, my husband, he loves reading middle grade books. I am not going to shame him for that. He loves the stories. He loves the things that happen in those books. And it could just be that they're fun for him, right? And that's okay. Read what is fun for you and what is enjoyable. And if that's self-development, cool. But if you're finding yourself feeling like you should be reading something, then maybe take a step back and say, am I doing this for fun or not?
Yeah. I think there's so much wrapped into that self-development space as well, because it's not just about what I should be reading. Those books are also full of what I should be doing. And it's so interesting because there's so many perspectives and viewpoints, and you pick up 5 books about time management and you walk away with 80 different things you can try. And I think specifically in that self-development space, there's a lot of telling and advising that goes on. But Alesia, when I heard you talking about the novels that you're reading, it's like you were gleaning so much that resonated with you from those characters and who they are and all of those things. It wasn't like thrown at you, right? Like it's in the story. It's in the character development where you really start to resonate and start to see all of those things. And I just think it's so interesting, right? That we can get trapped in that self-development space and then get so overwhelmed with like all of the air quotes like advice that is thrown our way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Even thinking about like how our ancestors, right? How did
Mm-hmm.
they learn things? It was through stories, it was through fables, it was through uh like generational tales told again and again and again. And that's how that we learned. It wasn't like, a teacher at a chalkboard. And so I think that if we go back to that, and that's why this whole discussion of like audiobooks aren't reading. That negates oral storytelling, and that's not okay, right?
Yeah.
So like thinking back to that of these stories and these fables and mythology, and like there's so much that we can learn about human nature and ourselves from just going deeper and hearing a story about, someone else's experience.
Yeah. And to touch on also that place of who's telling the stories, but who's telling in the self-development, self-help books, like who's telling you what? Be
Mm.
really, really aware of what systems they're operating in and what systems they're then pushing forward to you as you're consuming it. Because I know that for me, I'm definitely a quote unquote personal development junkie. But to me, personal development goes far beyond what anybody else can teach us about ourselves. It goes to that place of knowing ourselves on such a deep, deep level that we are able to understand not only ourselves, but get a better understanding of humanity as a whole, because we can start to see those nuances. But when we're starting to go into self-help and we're picking up a book, and again, this is no shame, no shade. If you enjoy it, fantastic. And be really, really aware, like just be aware of what systems it is pushing forward. A lot of them come from academia and or the medical or the science world. And there's again nothing. I come from academia. I come right. Lots of scientists in my world. It's great. And we also want to make sure we understand the lens that information is coming forward. Right. Yeah. Because how do we
Yeah.
become empowered with ourselves if we're just consuming blindly?
And I think that was a problem for me, and why the self-help books were so difficult for me to get through, because they didn't allow me to think for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And having grown up in the way that I did, grew up in a cult and being told this is the way, there are no other ways, having that pushed again as I'm trying to discover who in the world I am as a person outside of that didn't feel right. And so I just kept trying to make it feel right. And then got to a point where I said, enough, I'm done.
Now, we're not going to let you gloss over that, right? You just you just said you grew up in a cult, and like
I
that's
know.
not going to get glossed over, friend.
I know. Every time I mention that, people are like, wait, what? Go back, what?
Yeah, because so, I mean, the reality is yes, that's where you grew up. That was your life. That's normal in your world, and most people who grow up within a cult aren't coming out with their voice on it. And most of us, the majority, well, I'm going to say this kind of tongue in cheek, the majority of us did not grow up in a cult.
Well,
Um,
Yep.
I'm just going to go back and point at those systems again and be like, just be really sure we know what we're consuming. So tell us your story a little bit and like how that led you to this place of understanding yourself for yourself.
Yeah. So when I was young, uh, under the age of 10. My mom was a drug addict, and I, as the oldest of 5 kids, saw that firsthand. And we obviously, I wanted her to get help, and I wanted us to be together, right? That was like my 10-year-old brain was just like, I want my mom to be healthy and happy and good, and I want me and all my siblings and to be with my mom in this good situation. And so when I was 10, she went to a women's program that was supposed to be 18 months long, that was meant for addicts to help them get clean and like redirect their life. It was fundamentalist Christian, is probably the best way to describe it. For anyone who's like, wait, what was the religious kind of scope? It was fundamentalist Christian, I would say. We were there for 10 years. And so 18 months turned into 10 years. And people are usually like, well, how, why, how did that work? Well, when you are teaching someone, especially people with addiction, to not make those choices, they're relying on the leader to help them make those choices, especially in religious settings. They're not empowered to make those decisions for themselves. They rely on God, they rely on the leader, they rely on their situation and their setting of being away from temptation to keep them clean. And so, what was happening is that women would go through the 18-month program, they'd go out, they would get back into drugs and come back. And so the leader started to shift the way that she would talk about the empowerment of being able to make good decisions. And that was, I know how to help you. I like, you come to me, we can talk it through and we'll get you good. But you have to keep coming back to her to be able to make good decisions and to do the right thing. And there was almost this reliance and this fear of, if I go out there, and they would say things like this, like, if you go out there, your kids are going to be on the streets and your kids are going to be doing drugs. And it was just a lot of fear of, if I leave, this is my life. But I'm here. I'm fed 3 times a day. I have clothes that I need. My kids I know where they are. I know that they're taken care of. And so, yeah, we were there for 10 years. And I don't even think I really realized that it was a cult until I was 18 and I wanted to go off to college. And they said, uh, if you don't go to the college of our choosing, which the leader of that college was best friends with the leader of the cult, if you don't go to the college of our choosing, then you will not have a home to come back to. Now, I'm an 18-year-old girl who's never had a job outside of this cult, who does not have a driver's license, and who has never had to make choices for myself. And I, like, what am I supposed to do? And at that point, I was like, oh, I see. Now I understand what this is. And so a few years after that, I went through the college thing that they wanted me to go through. I came back. My mom was still there. Came back to help my mom with the kids because being the oldest of 5, the youngest one is 10 years younger than me. So quite an age range there. And then started going to the local community college because I wanted to go actually get a degree. And the college I went to was not accredited at all. So I wanted to get a degree, ended up meeting my now husband after a couple boyfriends. It wasn't the first person I met, right? So I ended up meeting my now husband. Around that time, my grandmother was really sick and my mom wanted to leave the cult and go take care of her mom. And obviously the leader fought a little bit about it, but you can't hold someone hostage there. And so my mom went and moved back to Syracuse, New York. And I did not want to move because I was still in college. And I was like, I just want to finish my degree. I want to be able to make a life for myself. Also, I want to figure out who in the world I am and like be on my own. I've been mom to my siblings. I've been mom to my mom. I've been taking care of everybody. Who in the world am I? And I'm kind of done taking care of everybody else. So moved in with my now husband. That was 11 years ago now. So Yeah, during that time though, especially those first few months, I wouldn't say like there wasn't really anything different about my life other than I didn't really go to church or didn't really, I just went to work and came back home. But then when I got pregnant with my oldest, we have two boys. When I got pregnant, I realized I want to be the best mom, and I have never been shown what that looks like. And so that's when my kind of like, who am I? And who am I outside of the cult? Who am I as a person? What are my values that I want to instill on my child? Really started to come to the forefront. And so it was a lot of not trusting my first thought, which I don't think that we talk about enough as a society, that like our first thought is just our brain protecting us because of something in our past. And so, and this is something that I talk to my kids about constantly, especially the one who's autistic. You know, he'll say, "Oh, something bad's going to happen." And I'll say, "Whoa, is that true though?" Like, I know that's your first thought, and that's okay. That's just your brain trying to protect you. But when you really think about it, is that really true? And he's like, "No." And I'm like, then come on, like your brain can't hold two negating things. And so remember what's actually true. And so, like, for example, I had a friend who was like, "Hey, I want to go do a beginner yoga class. Do you want to go with me?" And my first thought was, yoga's satanic. And I said, wait a minute, dial that back. Whose thought is that? I don't know if yoga is satanic. Like, in my brain, yes, I've been indoctrinated that yoga is satanic, but is it really? And I went to this class and I had a great time, and I actually like really really enjoyed yoga. And so like that is, and like was able to get to the point where I felt more in tune with my body. I felt better in my body, and there were so many benefits, and I was like, okay, that two things, opposing ideas cannot be true. So what is the truth? And so even, I mean, I still have situations where my first thought is something that is someone else's thought that was placed in my brain, and I have to say, wait a minute, is that actually how I feel about this topic? No, that's not how I feel about this. Okay. And then also giving myself grace that I am not responsible for my first thought, and that I don't take action on the first thought, that I take a second and say, okay, interesting, Alesia, not really true, but okay, I understand what is actually true. So yeah, that's my story.
So, unpacking all of that is looking at self from multiple lenses is what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, right? It's that first thought, that second thought, what's mine, what's not mine, and allowing yourself to start to filter that through. Louise, you had a thought there as well.
Well, it's the values that become like your guardrails, right? Like that becomes your touchstone. So that when you start to like question a thought or question something, you have done that work where you say like, well, what do I value? What do I know to be true? And who do I want to be? And we don't, as a society, take time to discover that part of us. We don't put language to our values. We walk around thinking we have them, like we do. But then there's that confusion between what are our true values and then what are the beliefs that we carry with us. We think those are our values, but they're not. And so, right, like that work that you've done, Alesia, to like really start to pull that apart and really start to like name and claim your values really does start to become those guardrails. It's that touchstone to say like, is this true or not? Is this who I want to be or not? We just don't take enough time to in our lives to really think about who we are from that lens.
Yeah, it takes a lot of like being able to trust yourself too, right? Because even thinking about how I grew up, like my mom wasn't taught to trust herself. I was not taught to trust myself. And I had to say, you know, I'm doing the best I possibly can to be the very best mother, wife, person that I can be. What does that look like? Right. And like actually had to sit down and say, I don't know what that looks like. And that's kind of okay. And I'm going to make mistakes along the way. And I'm going to, make some silly mistakes, of like, man, I really shouldn't have done that way. All right, good to know. But I think also having a partner who is also doing that has definitely helped me. Like my husband and I talk very often about how we each were raised and how we wanted to raise our kids. And I think that has helped us really approach parenting in a way that we've never seen shown to us in any way, but being able to fall back on each other and say, uh, hey, you did this thing. I don't know that that's the best way to approach it. Can we talk about this? I'm like not in front of the kids, right?
Mhm.
Or saying, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" Like in the middle of it if I need to, or like tap on the shoulder, right? But being able to say like, "I don't know that that's the best way. What can we do different, or how can we do this different, or this is what I think is happening," and like trusting each other and also trusting ourselves that we're doing our best, right? I think is so important. I don't think enough people trust themselves to make
For sure.
decisions for their lives.
Yeah, for sure. That self trust. I mean, we don't trust other people,
Yeah.
and that trust to trust other people needs to start with our own self trust, right? It's when we can learn to trust ourselves, we can learn what that even feels like to trust someone else, and yet we flip it around all the time. Like I need to learn how to trust you so I can learn how to trust me. No. Like you can experiment, sure. But what I love that you're sharing in there is this place of reparenting also.
Yeah.
And very often it's thought of like this big therapeutic thing where we have to go back in our past and pull all of our crap forward and put it out on a plate and look at it like it was a crime scene. And that's how we reparent ourselves. And it's not. It's that simple option that we give ourselves, that opportunity to be in choice, to make a different choice.
Mhm.
And whether or not we have children to parent, we can do that with ourselves. And it's interesting because you use that word empowered when you were talking about the leader of the cult, and that she was saying, right, I am here to help empower you to make the right choices, and here are the right choices, and let me tell you what the right choices are. And yet what I'm hearing you say in terms of your own choices with parenting, with you and your husband together, is empowering each other to make different choices that are not guided by an external factor.
Yeah.
So, like, how do we rectify this misuse of this term?
I think it's really interesting. I have a client who does a lot of like social work and has a nonprofit where they help like women executive levels get on boards, but her background is in social work. And they actually don't use the word empowered. And we're not allowed to use the word empowered in any of their copy for the reason of sometimes I think we use, and I love the way you guys use the word. So this is not to say that at all. But I think that as a society, we use the word empowered as I'm giving you power instead of the power being inside of us and then going out. And I think that if we looked at empowering differently, it would be like how I want to empower my kids that they don't need me to make decisions, that they don't need me to guide them on what is right or wrong for them, that my legacy is not in them. My own legacy is the people I touch, the people I interact with. They have their own legacy. It's not a reflection of me. It's not oh, I'm empowering you to be this thing. No, you have the power to be whatever it is that you want to do, or whatever it is you want to be. That is your legacy. My legacy is the people I touch. I have my own. It doesn't need to be passed down. So yeah, I think I have lots of thoughts and feelings on all of these topics, clearly.
Okay. So when so many thoughts and ideas, absolutely, with this place of reclaiming the word empowered, right? And again, this is why we named it like this, and we've shared our story of we neither of us actually like the word. We just don't, but we feel like there's a need to reclaim it, and to reclaim it as a way for us to build from the inside out. And when I think back over the stories that you shared throughout our conversation today, there is so much of that rebuilding from the inside out. It's rebuilding what you choose to read and how to find your way back to reading for yourself as an exploration of self, but also as an exploration of connection to the greater world.
Yeah.
That reclamation of self through what you went through with your childhood, through what you went through with your mom, through what you saw your mom go through, and to separate yourself from her in a way that allows you to stand as a individual. Just like I'm also hearing as a parent, you're allowing your children to stand as individuals so that they can reclaim self.
Yeah.
And so I guess my takeaway from our conversation today is that place of reclamation of self so that we can be empowered, so we can empower ourselves in our own lives and hold that space for others. I'd love to know for the two of you, what are your thoughts? What are your takeaways from this conversation?
Alicia, you said this, and I don't know that you use these two words back to back, but it was really about like that empowerment and the trust, that self-trust that comes with that. And I just think that not only do we not talk about empowerment like that, we need to we need to start, because it really is about trusting. It's about knowing yourself, and that you have, right, that choice, that ability, that internal power to be able to step into knowing who you are, being who you want to be. And that trust word is just so entwined in that ability to be empowered. And then it reflects out, right? How do we trust others, right? How do we trust our kiddos, right, to hold that space and to be empowered in their own lives? And we have to. And so I loved that how those words just really entwined in our conversation today, throughout all of the things that you talked about. So I really appreciate that, and I really loved that that part of. Well, I loved all of your story, but I just want to underline that part too, from our conversation today.
I think for me, something that I think that people should definitely take away is to give yourself grace. Most of us have never seen an example of what it is we want to be, right? Currently, like, what kind of person do I want to be in this world? We've maybe never seen that shown to us. And so giving yourself grace that, one, you're not responsible for your first thought. It's just your brain trying to protect you. It's okay. Breathe. What's the next thought? Is it true? Okay, let's go from there. And so giving yourself some grace in that regard, but then also giving yourself grace that every day is a little step toward that person that you want to be. And it takes time and it takes effort, but it's the, like you said, Kim, those little decisions that we make of just something a little different, and that's going to make a big impact.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Alesia, for sharing your story, for sharing your wisdom with us, and sharing some time with us today. Since we learned about how you love spending time with books, we love that you spent some time with us.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. What do you have going on in the world, or how can people continue the conversation with you?
Yeah. So I know we talked about books and cults, but I don't do either of those for my business. I am a podcast strategist, and I own a micro agency of just me and two other women, where we produce about 15 weekly podcasts. And we help business owners, like Kim said at the beginning, launch and maintain lead generating shows. And if you're someone who's interested in having a podcast, or you're like, wait, I have a podcast and I don't know what I'm doing, send me a DM. I'm more than happy to chat and give you some tips and tricks and strategies. I got lots of content.
She has some amazing content just on the website. Just these resources that it very, very helpful. We have implemented many of them ourselves. And also you are a fellow member of the Feminist Podcast Collective. So glad to shout that out as well.
Yes, go join us. It's really it's honestly one of my favorite spaces to be in. And that was one of my intentions this year, is only being in spaces where I enjoy being in them, and not making myself be in spaces that are draining. And no, that's one space I love.
Amen. Same. Yeah.
Love it. Thanks so much, Kim and Alesia, for this fantastic conversation today. And thank you, listener, for tuning in. Catch us on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye for now. And that's all for this week's episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. We hope today's episode has sparked something within you. Remember, we're all on this journey together. If something did resonate with you today, why not share it with a friend who might need to hear it too? You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. Your feedback not only helps others find the show, but also helps us understand what's most valuable to you. Until next time, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and remember, we're walking right alongside you. Thanks for being part of our community.